Hello there, everybody, and welcome to another Friday Fundamentalist Fails. I know it's not Friday where you may be, but it's Friday where I am. So as far as I'm concerned, it's officially Friday. And the breaking news today, I'm so happy you can join me for this momentous day. I went to sleep last night, obviously. I am a bit tired, but I did sleep. I got up and breaking news was that Trump was convicted, which is a incredible thing to happen. Um, I think that like the evidence was overwhelming against him, no matter what he says. I think that it was a great thing to wake up to. So not only am I happy that it's Friday and I get to do fundamentalist fails, but also, wow. Um, Now it's up to Judge Mashan to see what the verdict will be. I think that um, if ever there was a case of someone not showing remorse for what they have done, Trump would fit the bill. I mean, the man can't even acknowledge that he's done anything wrong, much less that he's culpable for anything. So I think it's going to be another round of, this is a witch hunt, this is unfair, try to tear down the justice system. Not only did the man sort of he went publicly questioning the validity of the court, which is dangerous, just incredibly dangerous. Um, he also was in contempt of the court for, I think, 10 counts was the. So if any, I think that if you really wanted to show that he has absolutely no remorse whatsoever, I think that would be it. So I really hope that Trump gets at least like a small amount of prison time. I think that at least he needs to go into home arrest. Um, if he gets sort of a slap on the wrist and a small fine or something, I think that the legal system is not working as it should. The fact that he is an ex-president should have nothing to do with what the court does and how it lays down its sentencing. This certainly wasn't a political trial. There was nothing about it that was political. This was somebody falsifying business records in order to use money to gain an advantage in an election. That's a crime. That is absolutely a crime. You cannot do that. You have to disclose what you're using and where it's coming from. And falsifying business records is illegal to start with, much less if you're doing it for to cover up something in order to gain advantage in an election. So yeah, the commander in crime is going to, at least he has that black mark against his name that he is a convicted felon. And I hope that changes people's minds, that he is a dangerous and a person that holds the law with contempt. Like he doesn't think the law applies to him. Foundationally, democracies and liberalism and liberal democracies are based upon the idea that no one is above the law. And that tangentially relates to what we're talking to today, because we are talking about sort of part of it is right and left, and where that comes from and how we designate what it means. But the 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 standard of our democracies is that nobody gets to break the law, not from the lowest person on the street to the highest king. And this is a byproduct of um, overthrow of the aristocracy. There was a point where the king could do literally anything. That first was challenged with the good old Magna Carta, which basically said that the king cannot take away it. And to be honest with you, people quote the Magna Carta like it was basically, oh, it was rights for the people. No, it wasn't. It was rights for certain people, most notably the barons that forced the king into signing it in England. Right, it was mostly the barons that created the Magna Carta in order to preserve their rights. That the king can't take land from the barons or sort of take away anything from them because they had rights under the Magna Carta. But it sort of got extended. And in our modern view, we sort of go, well, the law applies equally to everybody. Ideally, I realize it's not like that in practice, but the law applies to everyone equally. And if you break the law, it doesn't matter whether you are the president or you are a street sweeper or a delivery driver or just the most menial person. It doesn't matter if you are somebody on the street. The law applies to everybody equally. So this is a the legal system in the US has really it may have had a bit of a beating recently, especially since Trump's been doing all of these things and kind of getting away with it. The fact that the law's finally caught up to him is indicative, and he has been advocating that the law should not apply to the president. He has been advocating that he has carte blanche to do anything as the president and just get away with it. And we cannot have that system. We cannot have a king in charge. It just can't happen. But I'm talking about Prager today, and this is one of the things that sort of has been weighing on my mind. And I gotta admit, last night I was up pretty late. I put this up for Prager. If I'd known that Trump would be convicted today, I probably would have done something on that instead. But and yeah, that's true, Ramban. That's very, very true, because the shogunate and the imperial way, the imperial sort of status of the shogun. The emperor was one head of the country. The shogun was the other, and the shogun was the war leader. Technically, the emperor was higher, but basically they could do literally whatever they wanted. It was just power and control, and they could do absolutely whatever they wanted. And we have rejected these systems. We've rejected these antiquated systems. And I'll sort of explain how that ties into what I'm talking about here. But what I do want to present, and so, this is a landmark day. I just wanted to mention it. I did want to mention it. I did also want to mention that I have a debate coming up on the channel, which I am trying to get more of, and I'm trying to get people in. So I sort of found somebody in. They emailed me a massive email with I like that better. A massive email with all of these points about the flood, and I just said, hey, I'm not going to write back over email. It was a lot of points, but I said I'm happy to debate. I think that we can have a conversation about it. We can have a discussion about it. We can have a disagreement about whether the biblical flood is true. And last year I also had a very, very sore wrist from RSI because I type a lot. So I kind of just said, hey, let's just debate about it. Come on the channel. I'm not as nasty as I may appear at first glance, but yeah, let's have a conversation. So I'm Jess is going to be moderating that debate, who's just amazing and fantastic. Just awesome. Oh, hello, Ryan. Good to see you, mate. Very good to see you. Coach. I don't know about that one, but cheers, buddy. Yeah, so hopefully we can get some more of these going, and especially I really miss debating. I'm talking with Ryan from Modern Day Debate about getting more debates. I am trying to get debates. I've probably got to be a bit more forceful in challenging people, but I'm not good at that. But I'm trying my best. I'm trying my best, and that's what's important. Hopefully I should get a debate on there. But I want to show you this. This is Prager. It's Prager's celebration video that they've gotten to influence the education system in Louisiana. They're allowed to provide educational materials as part of Louisiana's curriculum, which is absolutely horrifying. Absolutely horrifying. So For a start, what is Prager? Well, it's sort of a non-profit advocacy group, but it really does promote conservative viewpoints. The problem with this is um, this organization, it isn't an education organization. It isn't something that sort of, is um, it isn't geared towards understanding curriculum and education. Prager himself is not a an educator. He's a talk show host. He's an entertainer. He's basically Dennis Prager, who heads it. He did radio talk shows. He's a political pundit. He's not any kind of he's not any kind of educator. I believe he has a Bachelor of Arts. I think in history. So he's not really um, he's not really a person who is part of academia, right? He is a talk show host that has a BA in history. Like, it's not really something that he didn't study political science. He didn't study education. He studied history, which is fine. If he can have takes on history, sure, I totally understand. But we've got to understand this organization is not one of they don't they're not they are a political organization, like, really.
Dr. Bromley, Superintendent of Education here in Louisiana. It is so amazing to be with you here. I am just so energized by this summit. There are 75.
All right, Marissa Street. Now, she's the CEO. She actually has a master's in educational and non-profit management. Okay, so she isn't she doesn't have a master's in education. It's education and non-profit management. So I believe she has worked as an educator. Um, I think that she's definitely somebody that could be said to be an educator, but it still doesn't change the fact that they really have no business going into the education system and making their political right-wing ideology, because they see the say the and we're going to get into this critical race theory as a propaganda tool, and it's not. It's not. They have this, they demonize this subject, and I'll explain to you what that is and what critical race theory is aimed to do.
500 teachers with us. We just made our announcement that PragerU is here to serve. We have showed our teachers during the conference this incredible document that we've been working on with your team on how to create basically a crosswalk between some of the state standards and the content that PragerU has been serving teachers with. And the reception has been so incredible. I told you earlier as we were walking in, what an amazing emotional moment it has been for me. And so I just want to thank you on behalf of the teachers that I've met, the parents, and the rest of America for really being a trailblazer in education. You've been doing incredible things here in Louisiana, and I want the audience to hear from you about your vision. And so maybe.
Yeah, so this is how they're getting their particular stuff into it. They're basically trying to adapt. They're basically trying to adapt their right-wing sort of ideological stuff into the curriculum so that people will not understand what it is. And they will want certain things out of the curriculum that they don't agree with.
Maybe we can just tap into that a little bit and tell us about this freedom framework, which is really how.
Yeah. So anytime somebody calls something a freedom framework, run. Like, seriously. This could, like, I'm really sorry to be cynical, but this whole thing about Freedom America good, when they're calling it a freedom framework, I mean, come on. It's not. It is a right-wing, politically motivated propaganda curriculum designed to implement their ideas into the education system?
We came together.
Well, first of all, thank you for being here with us today. We have over 7,000 teachers from across the great state of Louisiana who are just simply working on getting better at their craft. We've had some amazing results recently in a state that's been long challenged educationally. We have our highest national ranking that we've ever held. And so we have a lot of momentum, but clearly we have more work to do. Oftentimes we hear about math and
Yeah, so anytime they've got let's think about that. They've got the highest ranking that they have ever have recently, but now they're changing the curriculum why? If you are doing well, why are you changing to PragerU? Because it's not going to give you a better education system. Let me make that clear right now.
and English proficiency being low. And it is obviously too low. But if we look, social studies, history, and civics are actually our lowest proficiency numbers. And so whenever we started to explore that a few years back, we just said, look, our standards are weak. They're not rigorous. They're not consistent. And they don't challenge our students. And so we wanted to do something about that. And so we embarked on a year-long process, and we ultimately were able to have a set of standards approved for what our children are supposed to know and be able to do in the state of Louisiana from K through 12th grade. And we call it the Freedom Framework. And it's
that's what's freeing about it. Where does the freedom come from? Like this is the thing. The right-wing people in America think they can slap freedom on something and it just becomes all better. What is freeing? Where does the freedom come from? The Freedom Framework. Holy crap.
It sets out the fact that we want students to explore the people, the places, and the papers that have contributed to the greatness of America. We wanted them to appreciate how America is on a quest for a more perfect union, and not there yet. We wanted them to understand and appreciate the sacrifices and struggles that various groups have gone through in the quest for that more perfect union. And so this is our first.
Yeah, as long as those groups aren't black, right? Like, as long as it's not, the civil rights movement or something, that's basically where it's at. Let's acknowledge the struggle that those poor Confederates went through, trying to hold on to their property, which happened to be human beings. Like, seriously, it's really horrifying. It is really horrifying.
First year that the Freedom Framework has been in play in Louisiana schools, and so students have been able to engage with that framework. But what you will hear naturally from teachers is, hey, we need resources, we need support. And our agency doesn't mandate resource. We don't mandate support. Those are local decisions. But the partnership with PragerU is simply about providing teachers a resource that they might use and consider as they teach their students the Freedom Frameworks.
It's really a perfect partnership for us, because that is really what we're here to do. I remember.
Yeah, and this is how they're working. So they're basically mandating sort of curriculum with this Freedom Framework. You've got to be able to cover this topic, this topic, this topic, this topic. And then Prager's coming in to sort of say, hey, we can offer the resources for it if you need resources to be able to teach the stuff that you're being forced to teach. It's kind of like a two-prong attack.
Remember when I was a teacher, it was sometimes hard to be given new programs and know exactly how to implement that into the classroom, right? And you want to have things that are colorful and energizing that the kids would love. And you also want to be able to communicate with the home, right? With parents to say, hey, this is what we're doing with the kids in class. And that is exactly what we are making at PragerU. One of the things that we have in common, and I want to let you know that the teachers I've bumped into told me that they really like you. Okay, so that's a big deal, because like you're the headmister of the entire state, right?
Well, I like them too. So.
Yeah, and then I'm glad. And so what is your vision when you're so bold about this concept of American exceptionalism?
Yeah. No, we called that out early on, and in our Freedom Framework, it doesn't shy away from hard topics. It goes into all the hard topics, and we don't run away from that. But at the same time, America from its beginning was exceptional, and I believe that.
Okay, so this is where. So they're basically not even covering the fact that they're teaching American exceptionalism, right? That America has a special place in this world, that it should be treated specially. Now, I understand that patriotism runs, deep in the US, and I understand all of that. But you're sort of teaching people that America is something that it isn't. I think the best example of this was from that show, The Newsroom. Like, where is America leading the world in sort of metrics or status or any of these things? Like, America leads the world definitely in military spending. Definitely in military spending. It leads the world in most citizens incarcerated. It leads the world in that. Absolutely, there's no question. But things like literacy, things like innovation, things like there's don't get me wrong, America is a fantastic country and has done a lot for the world, but this whole idea that Americans should have a special, exceptional place in the world is just not useful, because these people, they will travel abroad and realize that nobody else thinks that way. Everybody thinks, hey, my country's the great one, and it's special. And we kind of understand that, we all think our countries are special, kind of because they are. They've all got a unique culture. They've got a unique background. They're all sort of unique in their own way. That we sort of have to look at other countries and give them respect. But exceptionalism is kind of this, well, you don't have to respect other countries. They don't matter. No one cares about Australia. Who cares about Australia? The importance of allies around the world is they really isn't. They're not, but these people are going to promote that to their citizens, and their citizens are going to have a deep shock when they run into people from other countries who, because they're basically like, well, your country doesn't matter, they're going to be like, go, well, you're a piece of crap. And then they want to blame other countries for, not liking them. Well, I'm really sorry. It's just, yeah.
And I believe that our students need to appreciate the majesty that is America. And they need to understand the struggles, the sacrifices. They need to understand their responsibility to sustain, to improve upon our constitutional republic. And I think that's what our freedom framework does. And so I'm really thankful that you guys have come alongside of us with these resources, because you're putting resources in the hands of teachers that they can use and they can show their students and hopefully make progress as we try to help students understand these standards.
The crosswalk that we
Well, yeah, and your 35th in infant mortality. I can't remember what the literacy rates is incredible, like how low it is. It's insane how low the literacy rate of the United States is. I just that is absolutely horrifying. Adult literacy rates. Yeah, it's something like 86%, which is just horrifying for a first world nation. Horrifying. That sort of ranks just below, Zimbabwe for literacy. Horrifying. Horrifying. Sorry, that's what it is. Yeah, so this American exceptionalism isn't something that actually plays out in the real world. And don't get me wrong, if you love your country, totally get it. Be patriotic. There's nothing really wrong with that. I don't feel it myself, but go for it. That's fine. But understand that it may not be this majesty and God-given right for you to be there and to sort of say, hey, everywhere else is crappy in comparison. I think it does a disservice to not only the people in the country, I think it also does a disservice to the sort of world community, the global village, if you will. If you're sort of saying, well, I'm special in this village. Well, no, not really. You might have a bigger stick, but that doesn't make you exceptional.
That we created in this document, by the way, is posted on our website. And so some of the teachers after our presentation, they were very eager to figure out how to just click on those links and find where to go. And so it's on the state's website as well, but it's also on the PragerU website. And so if anybody is curious, what are the pieces of content that we're talking about, they can certainly choose to just head over to prageru.com and find it, or on the state website as well. I know that you've been talking also about how to improve the standards here and how to really improve the academics that so many kids have been struggling with, especially during COVID years and post-COVID. What is your vision for that? And what are some of the things that you're doing there?
Yeah, well, this is beyond history and civics, obviously, but we are trying to return with a back to the basics approach to teaching children how to read, not confusing children with strategies to learn how to read, but saying phonics matters, having access to rich text matters. And then likewise, we're taking on math, foundational math skills. Like, I still believe that, kids should know their multiplication facts, and they should know measurement. They should know fractions.
Well, there's new ways to do multiplication. That's the thing. Like, it sounds like he wants to go by sort of rote learning, just sort of repeating things over and over and over. And it isn't the best way to learn things. Unfortunately, I mean, it'd be great if you could just repeat stuff and remember it, but that isn't the best way to learn things. And we kind of want to guide students to where they have strengths. It's okay. Like, I completely agree that we need a foundational, reading and writing and arithmetic and, the basics of, but we also have to have an understanding of where everybody else is coming from as well. We've got to have an understanding of social dynamics in some rudimentary sense. We're talking about a state that is going to be promoting some pretty horrific things. And I'll go through that later.
And if they have that foundational understanding early, then they're more likely to be successful once math moves to a conceptual understanding. So we focus a lot on reading and math. We're focusing on our obligation and opportunity around the high school experience to make sure that students are going to college, that they have had some experiences while in high school, but also elevating career and technical education and the trades crafts, understanding that students can have internships and apprenticeships and leave high school ready to go to work and make a living. We spend a lot of time thinking about how to elevate the teaching profession. And then finally, I would say that expanding educational freedom and parents' rights are fundamentally important for us. And we want to do everything that we can on that front because...
Well, I kind of disagree. Parents, like, don't get me wrong. I get that parents do want their kids to learn certain things or not learn certain things. And some of those things may be religious based. Some of them may not be. But if you're talking about a young person going into society, there's certain things that the parents should not ought to be able to say, hey, we don't want them to learn that. We're Mennonites, we don't want them to learn computers. A curriculum is there because it is the base level of skills that someone will need in order to basically fit into society, to be able to move into a dynamic society and function within that society. So without sort of reading and writing skills, you're going to be in trouble. Well, that's always been the case for as long as we've had an education system. Sure. It changed a while back where, basic computer skills became part of the curriculum because unfortunately or fortunately, one of the two, I'd sort of see it as a net positive. But so many things are handled by systems and computer systems that you will need to have a basic understanding of computer systems. Just a basic, computer literacy is what I'm talking about. You don't need to know coding. You don't need to know all of the, technical stuff, but you will need computer literacy in some way. Like that you will have to, fill out a form online, or you're going to have to at least be able to turn a computer on, navigate to a website and fill it in and submit it. There is nothing, there is always that necessity in our modern society. So the curriculum will change. And I think that in a certain way, you can argue that, hey, that has eroded away basic, say, math skills and things like that. Sure, I get it. People have calculators and they don't do math as much, et cetera, et cetera. But if you are not going into a profession where that is needed, the computer literacy may be more valuable than sort of, say, trigonometry or calculus or something. Really sorry, it may be more valuable to that person working in our society, computer literacy. So the curriculum will change, but really at a base level, it's there to give a base foundation for what people will need moving into society. And the reason why critical race theory is sort of included in that, or at least a base understanding of social dynamics in our current society, is because there is disparate subcultures within our society, and understanding where they came from and the challenges that they face is really important. Now, critical race theory, it isn't the white person bad that the sort of right wing tries to play it off as. That's not what critical race theory is. Critical race theory, it basically, well, as a foundation, it explains that race it's a social construct. We kind of made it up. There's nothing really such as race. You can't say, hey, race is more just hey, these humans have slightly different physiology or physical features than we do. So we're going to call them this. It's really, there's nothing really separating me from somebody in Africa. Like, physiologically, we're almost identical. Race isn't a real thing. It is a social construct. And understanding that social construct, the cultural things that go into it, is really important, because you have to understand that once out of colonialism, the different peoples have been treated differently. So number one, it's understanding that race is a social construct that has no real meaning in biology or in it has no actual, race realists are insane. There's no such real thing as race. It's just a social construct that we've made. Secondarily, it's understanding that racism still exists in the world, how to spot it, what it comprises of. There are disparate outcomes for people of different races. There isn't just, well, race has no impact on your opportunities and your outcomes. It does. It just does. Now, these people would like to say, hey, race has got nothing to do with what the outcomes of your life is. Untrue. It absolutely does. If you want to tell me that somebody that's born in, a trust fund baby that's born in the richest, I don't know, Beverly Hills suburb, and somebody who came out of the ghetto, if they've got the same sort of opportunities and outcomes, no. I don't think that's the case. I think that, there is something there that has to be addressed, but
children don't belong to the government. They belong to the family, and there is outside of the family, outside of the parent, there's nothing more powerful for a kid's academic performance than a high quality.
Okay, so I'll address that. No, nothing about it's taught in elementary schools, Rembrandt. Critical race theory itself is taught in graduate school, like like Robin says, undergraduate, and they do teach it in colleges and universities, at least like a unit of it, to understand the problems in society, much like they would teach essay writing, for instance. They will teach it, or computer literacy. They will teach it. They do teach before that, and this is where the conflation is happening, because Republicans will sort of say, oh, they teach it in high school. What they teach in high school is things like American history and the effects of it on modern day. For instance, the War of Independence, for instance. You cannot tell me that has no effect on the way that the culture is in America at the moment. Like, it just is. And the civil rights movement, and even if you go to women's rights, like the suffrage movement, that has a huge impact on the way we see life at the moment. You know, that these people had to fight for rights against people that didn't want to allow them to have them. Don't forget that, you know, African Americans could not vote. Women could not vote until very recently. These things are not small. They are part of history, but they're not critical race theory. But they like to conflate the two. Critical race theory is sort of looking at, well, we still have these elements in our society of just an unfairness, an inequality between these races. But more to that, them teaching that the races they're completely arbitrary. Like, they really are just something that we have constructed based upon the origin of these people. Yeah, women voting 1920. I don't know when. Black suffrage, when did that occur? Black men were given voting rights in 1870. So women could vote, and black women were effectively banned until the Voting Right Act of 1965. So we're talking about, you know, just over 50 years ago, could black women vote. So it was sort of black men first, then white women, then black women. So, you know, the question is, well, you know, good on Wyoming. Good on Wyoming. I'm really talking federally here, Rembrandt, but, you know, that's fair. Yes, it does indeed. It does indeed. I think that there are a disparate number of incarcerated black citizens and white citizens. You know, you can argue about crime all you want, but you know, there's a problem there.
Quality teacher. And so we need to work well with our families, work well with our teachers, so that everyone can support the students to be successful.
I love that message. I love that.
Third is, you guys aren't doing enough to teach our kids about financial literacy. And so we worked with a legislator and last year passed a law that in Louisiana, every student before they graduate high school, they have to have a one-year course on financial literacy. So they'll learn about budgeting, they'll learn about savings, debit, credit, contracts, insurance, all these adulting topics. And they'll have that experience before they leave high school, which I think is really important.
I love that. We have a whole
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that. I think that financial literacy is okay. I'm not opposed to that at all. Yeah.
show and an LMS where kids and adults who can say no to that? Well, we're working on literacy as well. So it's not an easy show to create, but we're working on.
Okay, so this is kind of, I want to show this because they're kind of crowing about getting into Louisiana and being able to set up this curriculum for teachers. So they're kind of setting it up. Oh, we're just helping literacy and all this kind of stuff. No, that's not all that they're doing. They want evolution out of schools. They want prayer back in schools. They want America to be sort of styled as a Christian country, or a Judeo-Christian country, because it is Prager. But so I want to show you just how bad Prager is on his education, and this is taken directly from their YouTube channel. So I really want to show you just how bad he is.
Dennis, I'd like your perspective on whether you think Hitler was far right or was actually a far left ideologue. Okay, Thank you for your time. I enjoy listening to Fireside Chat every week. All the best. Thank you.
Now, keep in mind, this is supposed to be an educational institution that is writing curriculum for students, right? So was Hitler far right or far left? I might actually do a poll and see what you guys think. I mean, I do know exactly what the audience the answer is, and or, and I know why. You know, I do know. I studied this in politics when I did a politics unit in high school. Like you could opt into politics, and I found it very interesting. I'll put a don't know in there. Yeah, yeah. Let's do that. So, what do you think? Go for it. Vote away. I want to know what you think. Oh yeah, Robin. Absolutely. Yeah, I got to highlight that one. Absolutely. Yeah. And the thing is that the way that I really admire the way that the black community in America makes a joke of it kind of thing. They kind of make a joke that there's special loans for white people kind of thing. And I think that you know it I think there's a lot of misunderstanding. Some black people misunderstand it and say, "Oh, there are special loans." No, there's not, but your chances of getting a loan are much higher if you are white. And if you come from a predominantly white area, you know, if you come from one of these sort of areas, you have a much higher chance. Even though, you know, your financial status might not be as good. I think John Stewart talked about the just the unconscious racism that you see every day. You know, like he went to a and I'll always remember this. He went to a I think it was a museum, or his producer went to a museum, and the producer was sloppily dressed. You know, he was just and the black guy was in a full suit, and the security stopped the black guy even though he was in a suit and, you know, very well dressed. And the you know, producer looked like a bum off the street, but the producer was right. And it's recognizing this unconscious sort of racism, because um the police kind of, they will target black people. Now, you can argue that, hey, it's mostly black people that they get committing crimes or whatever, but that kind of profiling completely misses all of the, you know, the white people committing crimes. So it's kind of this snowball effect, where if you really are paying attention to the black people and you're ignoring the white people, of course you're going to get more crime or find more crime. But you know, that is something that happens, and so it's important that we realize this. Softball question? You would think so. You would think it's a softball question, but you know, I wanna just sort of show you where he goes with this, because it's very interesting and telling, you know, what happened. Yeah, and you're 100% right. It is a right-wing ideology, absolutely. But let's see what he says.
Hitler was left wing in that he believed in socialism. Remember,
It's fascinating the way he starts out. Hitler was just say it. Just say it. So yeah, he didn't want to answer, and then says, well, he was left wing in this way. How so?
remember, Nazism is National Socialism.
Yeah, that's what it was called, but it was not, like, none of the policies that Nazis had were socialist. That's the thing. The Nazi Party was socialist in the same way that the Democratic Republic of China is democratic. That was just the name of it. Now, that was designed to appeal to disenfranchised communists out there. Yes, they did. They were absolutely not socialist. None of their policies were socializing things. The Nazi Party, in fact, had a very conservative view of business. Don't forget that while they were operating, they got their uniforms from Hugo Boss. They got their vehicles from Volkswagen. They got a lot of, like, business was flourishing and unregulated, and not, socially distributed at all. Business was very incorporated and privatized. Everything was privatized, but as a fascist state, everything was for the good of the nation. Everything was geared towards nationalism. So they kind of, and this is a hallmark of fascism, that private industry is preserved, but that private industry has to be working for the state, not the people, right? So in socialism, you're really looking at those industries and those private companies working with a lot of oversight from the government for the people, right? So you're basically saying, hey, you should be working in a socially responsible way. Fascism isn't about that. Fascism is about the privatization and, profiting people, but the goal is to support the state, not people. The state is where everything is directed. There's a very, very sort of nationalism, and don't forget, it's they were called national socialists. Nationalism is the focus of all of that private industry. But it's still private industry. It's not socialized. So yeah, it's kind of this, well, if it's in the name, it's got to be true. No, it doesn't. And that's horrifying that Dennis Prager, who apparently wants to run a pseudo university and wants to influence education, can't answer that question correctly.
Very few people know that, especially if you go to...
No, everybody knows that. Everybody knows that's what they were called, Dennis. But we don't evaluate whether something is right-wing or left-wing based upon what they called themselves. Because China is a very left-wing system. They're not a centrist democratic system. They would like to present themselves as such. They are not, because they're not democratic. Democratic countries have a suffrage. The people don't. It's the party that votes. It's not a democratic nation, but they call themselves democratic. The name does not matter. And this is the thing. All of the people that study history and sociology understand this. People that study politics understand this. Now, one thing I do have to say is left and right. It's not indicative of a lot of different things about a political system, right? You sort of say, hey, that's right wing, that's left wing. It doesn't encompass whether it's good or bad. It doesn't really encompass their economic policies. It doesn't even really encompass all the political attributes that system might have, right? Like, so, you can have far right political structures that have left-wing policies, right? There's no, so just saying, hey, it's left or right, it doesn't give you all of the nuance. And it has been criticized, this traditional left-right spectrum of politics has been criticized for being very simplistic, right? And I think it is very simplistic. It doesn't tell you a ton about that particular political structure. What it does, and you've got to understand the origins of it. So the origins was from France just before the revolution. So you had essentially a parliament, And the people on the left were the progressives. They were the ones that wanted to get rid of the aristocracy and were more socialist. Like they wanted power for the people and not the aristocracy. The right wanted to preserve institutions like the aristocracy, like the church, like the state, right? So that's where the left and right dichotomy of political leanings comes from, is from the pre-revolution France, where people wanted to preserve the hierarchy of the aristocracy and the hierarchical system, and people wanted, the left wanted to tear down those systems and give power to the people. And that was the left and the right, where it comes from, was the political house in France is where it comes from. So essentially, when we're talking about left versus right, we're talking about state versus people, right? So where you want power distribution. So in essence, you have something like far right would be things like fascism, where the state has all the power. One person may represent the state, like an autocrat. But before that, you do get to, hey, there is a state, there's privatization. It's more to do with whether you're preserving conservative structures or whether you're progressing past them to try to get power to people. And so when you're talking about sort of right and left in our modern society, like in America, very few people are far right. Very few people. You look at the Republican Party, it's still not far right. It's not far right. Now, far left, you get things like communism, right? Where all of the power is supposed to be in the hands of the people. And in communism, generally what happens is that a party on behalf of the people represents them and has all the power. Now, the interesting thing about this is both extremes lead to autocracy and totalitarianism. Right wing will lean towards totalitarianism, usually in the way of fascism. Extreme left will lead to totalitarianism in the form of a communist party taking power and almost an oligarchy forms, like we see in China. They both kind of lead to the same way. Yeah, absolutely. And it's patriotism, social norms, authoritarian government, strong military, traditional values. Yeah, I wouldn't say patriotism though, Shane. I would say nationalism. There's a big difference between that. But I wanted the reason why I'm saying this is you want to compare to them talking about American exceptionalism, right? So when you're talking about patriotism, you're talking about I love my country. When you're talking about nationalism, you're talking about my country is better than any other country, right? You're talking about exceptionalism. And this is the problem that we have, that they're starting to talk about their country, not in the terms of patriotism, but in terms of nationalism, that our country should control the world. That's a problem, because that is a hallmark signal of fascism. That's what Hitler thought. He thought he could control the world and that the world would be better off under the guidance of Germany. The same thing applies when people start to think, hey, the world would be better off under the guidance of the US. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Riddick. That sucks. That sucks. That's absolutely appalling.
Go to college where you don't learn much. But that is what Nazism.
Yeah, you go to college where you don't learn much. This is the man who is giving sort of resources to high schools. You idiot. Maybe you didn't learn much in college, because this is a simple question.
Stands for National Socialism. In that sense, it was left-wing, but it was not left-wing in another sense. The left divided the world by class. That's the classic Marxist division of the world.
No. Marxism wanted to eliminate class. That's the whole point. How this person can be head of a spokesperson for a university trying to put curriculum in there and say that Marx wanted class. No, Marx wanted to destroy the class. He saw there as being three classes. You had the aristocracy, the bourgeoisie, and the proletariat, being the upper class, the middle class, and the lower class, right? So he saw these three classes. And the entire idea of Marxism is basically giving the proletariat the power over their, getting them more power. So he is absolutely wrong. Yes, he didn't divide the world into class. He just gave names to classes that existed. Because if you're going to say, hey, there is no class within even our modern day system, of course there is. Of course there is. We do have an aristocracy, a upper class of billionaires. Like, if you think that Donald Trump is being treated the same as, a member of the proletariat, just a guy who works in a factory, you are out of your mind. If somebody in a factory who was in court held that court in contempt 10 times, they wouldn't be going home. They would be in prison. Like, he did not want there to be class. All he did was observe and categorize three levels of class. And we can break them down further to say, upper middle class, lower middle class, upper lower class. They're just a way of systematically defining. He didn't make them up.
Class, the proletariat, and the oppressor, if you will.
No, it's not the oppressor. It's the aristocracy. It's people that hold a large amount of power, and a large amount of political power. Like, it's not oppressors. I mean, Marx said, hey, yeah, they oppressed their workers. But at the time of the aristocracy, when you had the czars in Russia, that was absolutely... If you're saying that the czars in Russia did not oppress the proletariat or the lower classes, you are out of your mind. Like, seriously.
Whereas Hitler divided the world by race.
Well, yes, he did. Sure. But that doesn't mean he's right wing. You can divide the world by race and still be left wing. This has nothing to do with it.
Race is not a left wing or a right wing value. It has.
Then why are you saying that Hitler is right because he divided the world by race?
Become a left wing value in the last 25 years in the West. All of a sudden, race matters incredibly. The left has actually, in some ways, abandoned classic Marxist division by class and now made it by race.
No, it hasn't. So we understand that outcomes in our society are one of the indicators of where your outcomes are is race. That is just the reality of our modern world. And we are trying to stop people from viewing others in light of their race by explaining to them under critical race theory that race is a social construct. It is something that we kind of made up. So just because we acknowledge that there are racial differences and systemic problems with racism in our society doesn't mean we're supporting it. In fact, we're trying to get that. Like, this is the thing. They protest against critical race theory, and then they're saying, oh, but you've made race a thing. No, we're trying to make it not a thing.
But race was neither left nor right until this moment. It is not a right-wing value.
Oh, race wasn't a thing until this really. So all of that slavery in the US wasn't a thing until right. Okay. So segregation, where you couldn't drink from certain that had nothing to do with race at all. It wasn't a thing, was it, Dennis? How this man can sit there and say this stuff without exploding into fire is just beyond me. Do you realize segregation was a thing? Race wasn't a thing until this moment. What are you talking about? It's not a real thing. It's not a biological thing. It is a construct that we made up, but it was a thing. It definitely was a thing, and it certainly was a thing to people getting whipped in cotton fields. What an idiot.
I mean, I live among people on the right. None of them, not one person I know is a racist. They find.
Says the guy that just says race wasn't a thing until this moment. Seriously. I don't think this guy, this is the whole thing. I don't think he's intentionally being racist. I don't think it's intentional. But that's the whole point of critical race theory. It's basically saying there are unconscious decisions that you make based upon what you have learnt and things that you have absorbed, that the outcome is racist. Right? The outcomes are racist, not your particular decision. So, for instance, if you're a bank manager and some black people renege on their loans or get repossessed their vehicles, if you make a decision based upon race, you are being racist. You are.
Find the idea preposterous. So
yeah, but all my friends aren't racist. Wow. I mean, next he's going to tell us that he has a black friend somewhere,
It's not right to say that he was right-wing, and it's not right to say he was only left-wing. He was partially left-wing. And by the way, he hated capitalism, hated it. I just read a new biography of Hitler, and that was a major part of the biography, how much the man hated capitalism.
Yeah, I don't think he did, because capitalism did very well under Hitler. There's a reason why we have these companies still today that kind of don't talk about their time in Germany circa 1941 to 45, like, as I mentioned before, Volkswagen or Hugo Boss kind of thing. Hugo Boss designed their uniforms and did all the work on their uniforms. I think that he hated certain companies. I think that he had a hatred for companies that did not do what he wanted, but I don't think he had a hatred for capitalism. I think he saw it as useful, but I don't know what biographies he read. He hasn't shared it with me, so I could not check that. I really could not check that. So as far as I understand it, Hitler had a hatred for anything that didn't work towards kind of like the glory of the Third Reich, basically, the promotion of German culture. So he hated some churches because they didn't work towards the glory of Germany. He hated some companies because they didn't work towards the glory. He did hate a lot of things, but it more had to do with whether they were on board or not. So it isn't the system itself that he's hating. It's the fact that some companies didn't do what he wanted. And that's a completely different thing, whether you like capitalism or not. I think he had no problem with capitalism. I think he liked capitalism as long as it adhered to a nationalistic goal. I think he was fine. I think he hated companies that didn't do that, as he saw sort of opposed to the national interest. But he had no problem with capitalism as long as it worked towards the national interest or the promotion of the Third Reich.
That's also not taught in college.
Yeah, it's not taught in college because it's not freaking true. Ugh, friggin' Prager. And this man is the head person of what he claims to be a university who wants to decide education. So when he's sitting there saying, oh, it's partially left and partially right, no, I understand that the right-left political spectrum is very, it doesn't say a ton about whatever it is that system is. There's certain things that they can have, but to say that the Nazis were partially left, no, they had some policies that you could say, hey, those are left-wing policies, sure. But in the way that it is defined, under the political spectrum, the Nazi Party was a far-right ideology. Now, you can say, hey, that doesn't mean that they have anything in common with conservatives in America, and they probably don't. I don't think that a lot of conservatives in America are fascists. I know that word is tossed around a lot. Like, I don't think that Donald Trump is a fascist. I think he's a totalitarian autocrat, but I don't think he, I think that he shows a lot of those tendencies, but I don't think that he is the conservative, let's make the country great. I think he's only after him what's in it for himself. I think he's a selfish son of a bitch who is also a convicted felon, I might add. I don't think that he is because Hitler he had right-wing principles. The state, the glory of the Third Reich was the most important thing. The traditions of getting Germany back to how it was before World War I, when they lost the war and were put into financial hardship. I think that Trump is just after everything for himself. I think he's an autocrat and a despot. I don't think he's a fascist because I don't think he cares about his country in the slightest. I don't think he gives a crap about his country. I don't think he's a nationalist because he doesn't care about his country. He cares about himself. That's my opinion. Does that make him a terrible autocrat and despot who is going to be a totalitarian leader? Yes. Does that make him a fascist? No. Are there people in the Republican Party that are fascists? Yes. Well, yeah, but Rembrandt, what you've got to remember, and yeah, can we just go about 34 felonies? Thanks, Shane. Absolutely. 34 felonies. Guilty to all of them. It's a pretty landmark day. I get that. Hitler wasn't that. Yeah, Hitler was the personification of incompetence. Sorry, I didn't read the second one. Yes, he was. I mean, if you're invading Russia in winter, without any kind of cold weather gear, you are a bumbling fool. That is what you are. Sorry, that's the reality of the situation. There's only one way that can go. Yeah, so that's Prager not knowing the political spectrum, which is just a basic principle in political science. Look, it doesn't say a ton about, all it says, if you're talking about the moderate sort of climate of our democracies, it doesn't say a ton. All it sort of says whether somebody is conservative or liberal. That's all. That's it. It doesn't say a ton about what they believe or what policies they support. Just a generalized sort of feeling of whether they support conservative and old institutions or whether they wish to break down old institutions and distribute power to people. That's it. That's all, right? That's it. It doesn't say a lot, but Prager's trying to talk. See, the thing is, I think Prager, he can't say, oh well, Hitler was left wing, because he knows that's untrue. He knows it's absolutely incorrect to say that in political science. But I think that I think that I think that he's trying to talk out of both sides. He's trying to say, "Oh, yes, he's left, but also he's right," kind of thing, which is not true. Not true. It is fascism is a right wing ideology. I'm afraid it's just that's what it is. But it's weird that the right wing people, especially the neoconservatives, they're so afraid of saying, "Oh well, fascism is extreme right wing." I think it's because fascism is thrown around a lot, and I have issue with this, right? I have issue with this, that a lot of people who are conservatives are called fascist, and it's unwarranted. It is unwarranted. It's like saying that I'm sort of very left leaning, that I'm communist. I'm not. I believe in social democracy, right? So I'm not even completely opposed to capitalism. I think capitalism has some huge problems that has to be addressed, and probably very soon. But I am not a communist. It's a very extreme version of left-wing ideology, just like fascism is a very extreme version of right-wing ideology. And your average Republican is not fascist. They're not. Even though they're propping up a bloody tyrant, which is just terrible. Okay, so now we get into the main thing of what I want to show. And this is, wow, it's actually been a while. I did want to go through this.
We're live. Did we say that we're live? Yep. I want to hear it. We're live. That is Cam. We are live. Hello, everyone. Live on Facebook and YouTube. Today is Tuesday, March 19th.
Hello. I think we can
I'm
skip the preamble.
3 years now, right? PragerU Kids. PragerUkids.com, going on for 3 years, kindergarten through 12th grade, giving videos and books with educational.
So this is Jill Simonian, right? Jill Simonian. Now, she is basically protesting that CRT is the new segregation. Okay, that's what she's saying. That critical race theory is the new segregation for America, which is ridiculous. So they're trying to cry white segregation, which I don't even understand how that works, to be honest with you. And we'll get into why she's saying that in a second. And sort of, I want to focus on how Prager operates and how they actually carry out this disinformation campaign.
American values for all of you, our parents and teachers, to subscribe to share with your children at PragerUkids.com. Please tell me where you're from, because we are live today, and I'm super excited to get to interact with you. Okay,
I'm from Australia, and your ideas horrify me. Absolutely horrify me.
The big headline today is, because we tackle topics in education, right? So the big headline today that we're discussing is, quote unquote, the new segregation. I find zero joy in discussing this, but I'm actually extremely invested and interested in sharing this article that I did see recently in the New York
I bet you are.
Post. But tell me where you're from. I'm going to check in on Facebook right now to see.
Okay, so she is a fish. That's a phone, dude. That's a phone. I'm not sure why. She's got a computer. I'm not sure why she needs a phone as well. Maybe she's keeping an eye on the chat on the phone. So this idea of the New York Post. Now, the New York Post is it's a tabloid. It's a tabloid, and it is the Murdoch tabloid. So Murdoch is Rupert Murdoch, who owns a whole bunch of papers, a whole bunch of things. He works hand in hand with conservative think tanks to propagate this misinformation, or disinformation rather. It is disinformation because, well, they're outright lying.
Where you all are from. If you're from California, the belly of the beast, like us. If you're from Tennessee, if you're from Maryland, do we have
The belly of the beast is California. Oof.
any comments yet? I can't see any comments yet, so I'm depending on you to drive this. Yes. Let's go ahead and jump in. Again, we're tackling topics in education for parents and teachers. We call these parent and teacher alerts. I like to say that we can all get schooled together about what's happening in our education system. How did our schools get so corrupted that a New York Post article is now citing that critical race theory is the new segregation? And then the follow-up question that I do want to answer, and that I have a few clips to show you today. I got a bunch of clips that I've pulled to share with us, is how did we get here? Because that's a question that I often get in my DMs on Instagram. How did we get here? How did this happen? I do have some answers from experts, as Chris Rufo and Connor Boyack from the Tuttle Twins book series, if you're familiar with them. So, because our schools are corrupted with racism, with gender ideology, with social emotional learning, surveys that actually make kids more prone to being emotionally unstable, which is really tragic, especially in this day and age. So we're going to discuss all of this right now.
Yeah, so she's trying to claim that critical race theory makes children more unstable and sort of. So she's not talking about black children. She's basically trying to claim that white children are ashamed and they're all this and that. And it's not a thing. It's not a thing.
It is, I must mention, and everyone in this room knows, that March is fundraising month for PragerU, and we cannot do any of what.
So here it comes. Here comes the support us, give us money. If you are, I mean, I get it, you're a non-profit, but yeah.
What we do at pragerukids.com without all of your support. We have more than 500 books and videos that we've created in just the last 3 years alone. If you go to your website, and I'm pulling it up on my screen now because I'm going to walk you through it. If you go to the website, pragerukids.com, you can absolutely support. We are so thankful for your support for our for the creation of new pro-America videos. You go to the little orange button that says donate. You click on it, and you can click on a one-time donation or a monthly donation. And March is fundraising month. So did I get all of the business out of the way, everyone?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm just looking at Prager Kids now. It's kind of it's really horrible, and I would have liked to grab some books or some worksheets that they kind of have, right? They have this horrible thing called Otto's Tales. Yeah, and they sell all of this stuff. It isn't like they've just put out this stuff for educational purposes. They do sell all this stuff. Today is MLK Jr. Day kind of thing, and today is President's Day. Today is Veterans Day. You know, to sort of give this whitewashed version of history to children is basically what they do. You know, Christopher Columbus is a great man that did all of these great things, but failed to mention, you know, the native populations, what it means for them. Now, it's important to go into who this person is. She's not an educator. She's not in any way. She basically got her start just doing a mother's pregnancy guide kind of thing. Full-time TV host and entertainment journalist. I don't know whether, you know, why is people like this talking about something like CRT? Has she ever had a course in CRT? Does she ever study CRT? No, absolutely not. Entertainment journalist. It's important to realize that when we're talking about this, you would hope that they have some kind of expertise in it, but they don't. And she doesn't even understand what it is.
One. Yes. Yes, yes. Got this pulled up on my screen if you're watching live right now. Critical race theory is the new segregation across schools nationwide.
Right.
And
So this is coming from the New York Post. Now, the New York Post is run by Rupert Murdoch, who also owns Fox News, who also owns a bunch of conservative channels. This has been criticized in Australia as what Rupert Murdoch does. What he does is he holds on to papers, right? So if you understand Rupert Murdoch, he holds on to papers, and you might say, well, papers, like, why does he keep holding on to papers when nobody kind of reads the paper? It's because they give legitimacy for his other channels. So what he will do is bring out some outrageous story in New York Post, or what's one of the ones that in Australia? Sydney Morning Herald, for instance. And he'll come out with a or the Courier Mail is a better one, or Herald Sun, one of those. He'll come out with a story in one of these, something outrageous like this, critical. And don't forget, this is an opinion piece. Do you see it labeled opinion? Right? This is some person's opinion. It's not actually being touted as journalism. This is not a journalistic piece. It's an opinion piece, right? But the way that Rupert Murdoch operates is he will come out in one of his papers with this outrageous opinion pieces. And then everybody on the syndicated networks and, Fox News, they will reference the paper as their source, right? So this is him referencing himself, essentially. Oh, this paper says this. Number one, it's an opinion piece. Number two, he does this. He brings it out first in his papers in order to give legitimacy to all of the televised things that present it. So if this lady had gone to university, she would have learnt about how to be critical of your sources. And I am very critical of this source. This is this is nonsense. This is basically you quoting yourself. This is nonsense.
the person who wrote this, the woman, is Wei Hua Chin, and I really hope that I pronounced her name correctly. I want to start off with who she is,
It's not that hard. It's not that hard.
because I always like to know who's writing these thoughts, right? You always got to look at the source. She's an adjunct fellow at the Manhattan Institute. She's founding president of the Chinese American Citizens Alliance of Greater New York, freedom fighter. Okay.
What? Where does it say freedom fighter? She's a founding president of the Chinese American Citizens Alliance, Greater New York, and adjunct fellow of the Manhattan Institute. So what? It's an opinion piece. She's not writing as a professor or a some kind of expert on the subject. It's her opinion. She's not even reporting news. It's her opinion. Just her personal opinion. That's why it's labeled an opinion piece.
Graduate of Yale, Princeton, and Columbia. Woo!
Well, she's not reporting as that. That's her personal opinion. That's why it's labeled an opinion piece, because she's not supporting this with any kind of academic credentials or any kind of academic references. She's just giving an opinion.
Pretty smart. Okay. So let's take a look at what she has to say. I just want to read through this. I shared the link to this article in the
Yeah, and Wei Hua-chin has also been she basically says that affirmative action is racist, right? That we shouldn't be giving priority to affirmative action as well. So she sort of believes that affirmative action is it's robbing Chinese students, essentially, of Chinese background, because we're doing affirmative action to help those who are disadvantaged in our society.
Facebook and YouTube title. So if you want to follow along, definitely click on it. Here we go. The caption underneath this darling picture of these two kids. CRT is
Oh, that darling picture. Won't somebody think of the children?
not just a war on kids, it's actually a war on the entire Western civilization as characterized by the Enlightenment values of individual agency and freedom. This is the answer to how did we get here to this corrupt state of our education system. So I just want to go through her article a little bit. Here we are. Since the public became aware of critical race theory a few years ago, it subverted almost every aspect of America's fabric. And here she goes on to continue.
It's not a neo-Marxist dogma. It is not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You may argue that it is a liberal sort of viewpoint. You might argue that, but it's not. It's not neo-Marxist. There's nothing to do with Marxism in it. That is ridiculous. And I mean, this is why it's an opinion piece, because she won't back that up with any citations, any kind of points to how this emerged from Marxist ideology. She won't do that because it's an opinion piece.
T, in operative terms, is a neo-Marxist dogma, reduces every interaction between individuals into a collectivist conflict between the oppressor race, the guilty villain, and the oppressed race, the righteous victim. And the kids are not well. CRT is not just a war on kids. This is what the writer of this piece says. It is actually a war on the entire Western civilization as characterized.
It isn't. And it's not recrimination for oppressors and things like that. That's not what it's there for. That isn't what it's there for. I just want to look up this education activity office. Diversity including Education Activity Office of Diversity was shut down. When was it shut down? Who shut it down? Why did they shut it down? Who found it to be toxic and divisive? Who found that? Because as far as I can see, the Department of the Interior still keeps an Office of Diversity, Inclusion and Civil Rights. I don't know, like, this is, like, she hasn't said that it was CRT that caused this, but she's suggesting it. It really is a horrible article.
By the Enlightenment values of individual agency freedom. Okay, so what are we talking about here? This answers the question that so many of us parents and teachers consistently have with why is gender ideology, radicalized gender ideology, being fed to 5-year-olds through picture books in kindergarten and first grade? Why?
Yeah, that's not CRT. That's not CRT. Like, this is the thing. They want to conflate any kind of history that say, hey, there was a period of time where black folks were enslaved by white folks. That is CRT to them. That's not CRT. That's just fucking history. That's just what happened. Like, there's going to come a point where kids are going to have to know about the history of the country. That a bunch of people from Europe came over and took a country away from people that already lived there, that were natively living there. That isn't CRT. That is just history. That's what happened. Like, they're just conflating CRT with any mention of race, like any mention whatsoever of what happened in the past due to race. That's not CRT. Critical race theory is a lot more developed than that. It sort of goes into our current understanding of what race means and how we may look at people through the lens of race, so we can catch ourselves when we are looking in a way that is not is interpreting that race as being something real when it's not. That is really what it's there to do. But they want to conflate anything that even mentions different races with CRT, and that is not the case. Critical race theory is more than just saying, hey, black people were enslaved. That's not critical race theory.
Are outside agencies like Panorama, I'll name one of them in a local school district that is close to my home. Why are outside agencies supplying social emotional surveys to children in schools as young as 8 years old?
Because the only way to find out, I don't know if you know much about psychology, but there's this thing called statistics that's really important in psychological studies. I cannot stress how important statistics are in psychological studies. The only way you can carry out statistical studies in psychology is to get data. That's it. That's the only way. Why are they doing surveys of children? Because that's the only way to tell what they're feeling and what they're going through. What is wrong with you? Do you think that just assuming your kids are doing well and they have to be this and that doesn't work? We need to ask them how they're doing. Oh, but if we didn't ask them how we're doing, they wouldn't be sad anymore. I got news for you. They're going to be sad. We just don't know about it. Oh, yeah.
Asking them, 8-year-olds, are you non-binary, as the first question? Why do we have...
I don't think that's the first question. Probably your name is the first question, lady. I don't think so. You know,
DEI in schools, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Why is our curriculum being dumbed down? Why do
we have diversity, equity, and inclusion in schools? Are you serious right now? So you don't think diversity, equity, and inclusion should be a thing? You think people should be ostracized because of their race, because of their class? Why can't we be inclusive? I don't understand. Like, it's almost like they're saying, why should my child be forced to be nice to this other child? At this point, the problem is you, lady. The problem is you.
initiatives being put forth for eradicating SAT scores? Why is all of this?
Yeah, so it's not. So when you say eradicating SAT scores, that's not what they are generally trying to do. Now, what they're sort of saying, and what the push has been from a lot of educators, is that having one big exam that essentially decides a lot of your future is a lot of stress for young people. That maybe if we spread them out and have a number of criteria to work towards, it'll get us a better idea of what a person is capable of, what a young person is capable of, that doesn't put so much stress on them over this one test that's going to decide the rest of their life. There is a huge amount of pressure under that circumstances. And places that have incredibly good educational outcomes, I'll point to Finland, for instance. They don't have this kind of thing. Finland has almost no tests at all. And their students spend a lot less time at school, and they have amazing outcomes because they are understanding that education, the purpose of an education is not to succeed at a test. That isn't the purpose. That is not the purpose of an education. The purpose of an education is to prepare you to work and live in the world And that's what the purpose is. What you will need to know to thrive in the world and, have a good life. That's the purpose of an education. And part of that is understanding the history of race, why it's not a real thing, why it's socially constructed, and breaking down that social construct so that you don't see race as a you and them anymore. This is the whole point of CRT. They are us. We are them. It's not us and them, it's we. We're the same. And that's the whole point.
It's happening. Many of us parents and teachers ask, why is race a central issue? Why are we teaching?
Because it's a central issue in our society. If society did not have systemic problems with outcomes being decided by essentially what race you are or what area you grew up in, then we wouldn't have to. But that's not the reality of our world. And you aren't helping.
History and math in some cases through this lens of race. It's to answer this question. The answer to that.
We don't do math through the lens of race, but what we're trying to say is that there is a racial component to how you are taught knowledge at home. That a lot of people of a different race aren't taught basic arithmetic skills, aren't taught basic reading skills. And that's a problem in our society. It's a problem with our society. How can we make up for that? How can we help people who are from those areas that have not been taught those skills?
That question is, this is a war on kids because it's a war.
Oh, won't someone think of the children? It is not a war on kids. It is not. Come on, let's be serious here. This is a war on kids. Get out of here. It's not a war on kids. Inclusivity is not a war on kids. Just you think it is a war on your kids because you're privileged. And we want to say, hey, we want to dedicate some resources to those who aren't as privileged. And you think that's a war on your children. Ugh.
On Western civilization. And that sounds.
Oh, it's a war on Western civilization. Oh, just fuck off. Like, seriously, this woman irritates me. I'm sorry. Like, this is a war on Western civilization. If we help out those who are in need, that's a war on Western civilization. Oh, get out of here.
It's very larger than life and hyperbolic.
Oh, yeah. And it's an opinion piece from a random a random sort of academic who thinks that equality is racist.
But the collectivist race reductionism of CRT indoctrinates kids, even young ones still reading picture books, to despise all whites as privileged oppressors and rally to all blacks as helpless victims.
No, that's not what it does. That's not what we're saying. No, not all whites are oppressors. No, that's not what it's saying. Like, it doesn't say all whites are oppressors. It really talks about the systems that we've set up.
And this article continues. This article goes on, and it is it's very eye-opening. And for
It's an opinion piece in the New York Post, which is a tabloid. A tabloid. Like, it doesn't do serious journalistic stories. It does tabloid sensationalism. And the only reason Rupert Murdoch holds on to that paper is so that he can give legitimacy to idiots like you.
for those who really are just becoming awakened to what is happening in our schools and have all of these.
Okay, so she's trying to say she's woke about CRT. She's awakened. She gets it. Oh my. Because she understands that CRT is tearing down our entire society. What the hell is wrong with you? Like, seriously.
Questions. I really encourage you to read this, because this article serves as the foundation of what our original why was for creating PragerU Kids. It's so we teach kids the fundamentals of what America is built upon: equality, liberty, individual
Well, equality, that's what CRT promotes, is equality.
responsibility, self-reliance, so that when children learn these fundamentals,
Self-reliance. Self-reliance. As you ask for donations from people, you want to teach self-reliance, do you? Can we just pay attention to the first, like, 10 minutes of this thing? She was asking for donations from people. Can we just point that out for a second? That's self-reliance to you. I suppose it's okay when you know you're promoting your own values to ask for help. So it's fine to get help from people when you're promoting your own values, just not when you're promoting anybody else's values, right? That's terrible. Be self-reliant.
of what makes America America to be the most free society in the world.
Oh, please, it's not the most free society in the world. Come on now. Again, I'll go back to that newsroom clip that was amazing. Like, there's free like Amsterdam must have the most free society in the world. You can literally bang a prostitute followed by, you know, doing drugs in front of a police officer and he won't say shit. It seriously, you're tripping if you think America is the most free society on earth. Like, I know you go freedom, 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 but it's not, you know, come on now.
They can reject and pretty much recoil at all of these CRT based initiatives like diversity, equity, and inclusion that are being force fed to them in schools. I want to
Equity and inclusion. So you think equality, not equity, because you said equality before, and equity is kind of better than equality. Equity is the idea. So if you don't know the difference between them, equity is kind of saying, hey, everybody gets the same amount of help, the same amount of opportunity, basically. Equity says that if you are, like, we have to give more to people who don't have the same opportunities. I can probably find a picture that explains it very well. Let's see. Yeah, so this is sort of equality versus equity, right? So it basically is showing that equality is everybody gets the same boost, everybody gets the same resources, kind of thing. Equity means that the people that have less opportunity, that have less, get more, so their outcomes are the same. And CRT is largely based upon outcomes. What's the best outcome for everybody across the board? How do we get to best outcomes situation? So, for instance, our tax brackets, right? So if you make a lot of money, you get taxed at a higher rate than someone struggling to survive. If you are in a wheelchair or in some way disabled, you get help from the government that somebody that isn't disabled might not need. Okay, that's equity, right? And I don't know anybody that's sort of saying, hey, well, you know, I don't get help from the government, so you shouldn't get help with wheelchair ramps or anything like that. Maybe that's what she is saying. But I don't know anybody that says, hey, there should be no equity in society, right? There shouldn't, like, somebody is in a wheelchair, you shouldn't get any help whatsoever, because you don't, you know, everybody should get the same. I don't know anybody who believes in total equality and doesn't have a modicum of equity in that. I don't know anybody. So with equity, you're really looking at how to get people in a, you know, not sort of above other people, but how to get them in a you know, a reasonable place in society. So this goes alongside with the veil of ignorance that John Rawls sort of wrote about, that ideally we want a society where it doesn't matter if you are the person who is sort of at the fence line and doing well, or the person in the middle, or the person at the bottom, you'll still have a reasonably good life no matter where you are. And that's ideally what we're after. But a lot of conservatives just don't want that. They want the system of there being a huge 1% upper class, impoverished lower class, and, a middle class that's barely surviving. And it doesn't have to be like that. It's just that's what they want. And part of the lie that I see, and I've heard this mentioned before, I can't remember who mentioned it, but the American dream is kind of this way that they fool you. And I'm sorry to all the US people out there, but they sort of like, well, if you're at the bottom and you work hard, you can get there too. And it's not incorrect, but it is kind of misleading, because 99% of people are not going to get there. And the people that are born into these trust funds and these sort of into wealth are there already without even trying. So the idea about this American dream where if you work hard, you will make it, it's kind of a lie. It's kind of, you can work hard all your life and still not go anywhere. In fact, that's probably what's going to happen. But with a society with more equity, we can at least have an outcome where all of us are satisfied with where we are in life. All of us are working towards a common goal, and we're not having to live in poverty. And that's what CRT kind of promotes. But conservatives hate it because they want to be the 1% without even deserving it in any way, which is sad. It's sort of trample people to get to where you want. It's a horrible way to run a society. And it's why countries that are more socialized, like the Nordic countries, like Finland and Sweden and Netherlands, that they do have a happiness index that is way higher, like way higher than ours or Australia's or America's or England's. It's why.
Talk a little bit in this article now, and leave your comments as you're tuning in, as you're watching this, if you're participating live. In the article in the New York Post, beginning in full force next year in California. Aha, here in the belly of the beast. But already,
yeah, I don't know why she keeps saying belly of the beast. I think it's because this sort of the California predominantly liberal kind of state. She thinks it's the source of all evil. It's probably because Hollywood's here and they hate Hollywood, kind of thing. It's because they promote inclusivity and equity and equality and all of these things that they fucking hate. They hate it. They hate it.
introduced in some locations. The state's recently mandated ethnic studies model curriculum instructs kids that they belong to either the oppressor group or the victim group, due only to their individual race.
No, they give history of ethnic origins that have to explain to kids that some of them, their ancestors used to be enslaved or were invaded and colonized and had their country taken away from them. Like they don't instruct kids that they're part of an oppressor group or a victim. They don't do that. That is not what it does. This is a lie that this person has put into an opinion piece, so they can't be called out for disinformation. So it's an opinion piece. Oh, well, it's just my opinion. I don't have to back it up. No, that's not what it does.
And this is very true. If you live in California, you know that by the year, I might be mistaken, but I want to say by the year 2025, I might be mistaken. You might want to double check that. But in immediate coming years, ethnic studies will be a graduation requirement here in California. And let's see, as this article details from the New York Post, Don't be lulled that ethnic means inclusion and acceptance. Manuel Rustin, who helped draft California's ethnic studies curriculum, stated, ethnic studies without critical race theory is not ethnic studies.
Well, so he's basically saying that it's based upon critical race theory. Like, it isn't critical race theory, but it is it has its roots there. Like, I get that. Like, critical race theory is a thing. It lends itself to a whole lot of things. Like, there is a whole lot. If you're studying, say, anthropology, you're going to be basing a lot of your stuff on critical race theory because of colonialism. History uses it. A lot of different subjects use it. It doesn't mean it's the thing itself. So you've mistaken something that draws upon a lot of different sources to put it together, like all curriculum does. It draws from a lot of different sources for the thing itself, right? So, for instance, a sample lesson in this thing is stuff like narratives. What does a narrative mean? How a narrative's shaped by telling stories. How what's featured in a story produces interpretation. Without sort of media analysis, that doesn't exist either, right? So they will draw upon a lot of different stuff, and we're talking about history and sociology here. There's a lesson for student civic engagement. Without the political framework, that doesn't exist either. This isn't just critical race theory. This is a lot of different stuff. They're not. This person is not presenting this fairly at all.
CRT says again that individuals cast into the oppressed class can do nothing about their condition. So forget achievement, forget delayed gratification.
Yeah, there's nothing I can do about being white. I'm not sure, and the I think they're using a bit liberally oppressed, sort of class. Yeah, if you're born into something like that, um they're not, like, if you're born into a marginalized group, there's nothing you can do about it. If I'm born into being white, there's nothing I can do about it either. I don't, like, I wouldn't say oppressed. Like, I'm an oppressor, but if you're talking about a class, you're not even talking about race at that point. Now it might go into sort of um, oppressed groups, yeah, but I don't think they're talking about, like, modern people as being the oppressors. They might talk about oppressors in the past, sure, because they were oppressors. I mean,
Forget about your belief in progress, punctuality, forget about the concepts of meritocracy, forget about achieving based on hard work and perseverance, forget about math and science, forget about the hard facts and longstanding truths of math and science. Those are all considered quote unquote whiteness when put into the context of the ethnic studies that is based in critical race theory.
no, they're not. No, that's not what they're saying. That is not what they're saying. Um, wow. That is not what they're saying at all. And this is an absolute perversion of what critical race theory actually is. Absolutely disgusting. And you're saying this like it is true. It's not. It's somebody's opinion piece.
Okay. So the bottom line is that, and I want to scroll through to the end of this, because everything is racism under critical race theory, disparate outcomes by race can only come from racism and must be eradicated. what that means. What does that mean in terms that us parents and teachers can understand? Kids who are capable of achieving great things are their potential is essentially squashed through the system that is being implemented in their school district. The DEI initiatives do not want kids to excel beyond others because that would be quote unquote inequitable.
Yeah, no, that's not what critical race theory says at all. That isn't what it says. It's just, yeah, and I think this article, that they've really taken this article as, you know, the absolute gospel of, you know, what critical race theory is without even understanding what it is. I think it really is just, you know, people like Rupert Murdoch who hate the idea of help for those who need it and equity, not wanting to have it in. Yeah, I've kind of just about had enough of this lady. I'll go for a little while longer, but seriously, she's acting like this opinion piece in a tabloid of Rupert Murdoch's paper is like the academic word on critical race theory. She's acting like it is gospel of what it is, and it's not. She's acting like this trashy news article is this amazing thing, and it's not.
This is called equity. I'm back to the New York Post article now. Equity is a marketing name for time, something that teachers are not requiring anymore. This answers the question, why are schools abandoning the meaning and achievement of high SAT scores?
Because taking, as I said, taking one test that is stressing out students, like making it a few different ones that are over time to show a child's performance. It also helps with, say, students that cheat on the SATs. It also helps with a lot of things. It's just looking for better outcomes because some students, for instance, don't test well. Some don't test well. That's it. Some just don't test well. Some students are very intelligent and they don't perform well in school. There has to be other ways to determine whether people are what they're capable of and what they can do. I did very badly in school. I did terribly in school. That might surprise a lot of you. I did absolutely terribly. Does that mean I'm useless? Does that mean I should be cast aside? Does that mean I should not give my opinions and relegate myself to nothing? I don't think so. I think that we have to stop measuring people by just their academic success. We've got to stop doing that. Okay? Because the worth of somebody does not come down to whether they had access to tutors and, I can almost bet this woman has her kids tutored. They go to the finest schools. They have opportunities beyond the dreams of somebody who grew up in the ghetto. But you don't want them to have the same opportunities because you want them for yourself. Because you're a racist. You think you're entitled to that because of where you came from. So if we go backwards, a lot of that entitlement probably came on the backs of people that were oppressed. I'm really sorry, but Black people were oppressed. You might not like the history. You might say, hey, I don't like that. Great. Black people were still oppressed. They were enslaved. They were segregated. And you using the word segregation is horrible because having equity and equality in schools is not segregation. They're not saying that we've got to, when we start getting fountains that white people can't use, then maybe you've got a point. Maybe. But that's not what's happening. And the fact that you're painting it as bad as what happened to black people, you know, Jim Crow laws, is disgusting. It's disgusting. But yeah, she's got an article from a trash magazine by a trash person who's written an opinion piece, and she's taking it as, look, this is proof. This is why we need CRT. Don't forget what I said. One of the units of this ethnic analysis is saying, how does the interpretation, like critical thinking, because they're promoting critical thinking, and you know, conservatives like this don't want anybody critically thinking at all, because that doesn't help them. That doesn't help them at all in any way. But I'm going to call it there, because quite frankly, I can't stand any more of this lady. I think that she's like, a part of me wants to say that she's unaware of her privilege, but I think she knows. She knows she wants her kids to have these benefits and this leg up that others don't. She's happy with that because she doesn't care about other people. I care if someone in my society has access to books and to you know, computers and to resources. I care about that. She doesn't. But the fact is that they want to teach kids, hey, if you're of a, you know, let's take out the whole race thing and act like we have some kind of superiority because we just happen to be in the right tax bracket or coming from the right area or be of the right race. Even though that's just a social construct and means less than zero. It doesn't have any bearing at all on how intelligent you are, what you're capable of, nothing at all. It just means that you've got access to more resources, more wealth, more money, more stuff than they do. That's all it means. But, you know, we see that a lot of right-wing people are happy for that to be the case, which is preserving the class structure of the you know, upper class. They want to be in that upper class. Whereas a lot of people feel on the left that the classes are becoming too disparate. The upper class is becoming beyond achieving. A lot of people can't afford homes. They can't get out of a rental trap. And the people on the right are happy for that to occur because they make money off renting. So they're happy for that to occur, but we're saying, hey, that is bad for society. We want people to be invested in society, to at least have a shot at happiness in society, not locked down the bottom. Upwards mobility has always been a hallmark of American ideals. And it's slowly getting eroded away because people like this, they don't want to acknowledge that there's less fortunate people who have less fortunate, and they don't want to acknowledge that part of that is race. What race you are is a determining factor in that. But let's deny reality. Let's just say, hey, everyone's in the same, you know, has the same amount of resources. And, you know, at that point, you're just denying reality. And so what I would like to see is these people, if they're fine with, you know, there being an upper class and people of the lower class and people who are black having no shot, just admit it. Just be honest and say, hey, I'm doing fine. I don't care about you. I'm doing fine. I have all the privilege that I need. I don't care about you not being able to succeed or being in a very vulnerable spot now. So I don't care. Why don't you just be honest about it instead of doing this? Well, it's destroying our society, promoting equity. Just be honest. Just be honest. You don't care about black people. Just be honest, please. Anyway, that's my rant. Thank you for listening. Yeah, this was, you know, I'd had this in the works for a little bit. I really dislike Prager and everything they're doing. If Prager is trying to market their ideology and their religious-based right-wing ideology to your education board, I would encourage you to do something. I know that I'm just a random Australian guy, but I think it's important that we stop people like this, and I think it's important that we understand that they are trying to break down. They're trying to send us backwards to a conservative era when, the start of the Industrial Revolution, where poor people were poor and they were in their class and they should stick to their class. Don't get big thoughts above your station, and where the upper class with the money and the wealth and the parties and the privilege. That's what they're trying to send us back to. Don't accept it. That isn't how it has to be. And Nordic countries have 100% proved that life for everybody is better when we have a more equitable and a fairer society for everyone. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I want to thank my mods who are always so awesome. Robin, you are an angel. I think some of the other mods were in, and I really want to thank them. Thanks for your membership, guys. I really do appreciate it. I really do. So thank you so much. It's great that Trump has been indicted, convicted. He is a criminal. He will always be a criminal. The first criminal that is an ex-president of the United States. We can only hope that Judge Machan gives a fair sentence for anybody in our society, and Donald Trump doesn't get special privileges, but we will have to see. If you do want me to cover anything or have any suggestions, just put them in the comments below. More than happy to look at anything you've got to say. If you do have any comments, throw them down below and I will read them. I may not respond to everything, but I definitely read them all. So thank you so much, everybody. I really do appreciate it. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to others. Understand that others' origins and where they come from may not be the same as yours. And so being aware of how you're viewing others and their origins is a really good idea. Be kind to them because they may not have the opportunities that you have had. So do be kind. But do take care of yourself, everybody, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
I